Eventually, I got to write a script for, it was Guarantee Trust Bank. They were doing their IPO. And I remember, because at the time, Guarantee Trust Bank was known for doing lots of brilliant press ads, but they didn't do TV commercials, And so we did this presentation, the agency had put together a presentation, and they were going without any TVs, because Guarantee Trust Bank doesn't do TVs. But I wanted to do TV, so I wrote the script. I was like, what? Let's do a TV. And it's like, no, they don't do TVs. But I wrote the script anyway. And when the team was going, just before, I think it was the day before the team went to present, my boss read the script and he loved it. So he took it up to, the higher ups. They saw it. My ECD at the time loved it as well. So they decided to add it. And guess what? Client approved it. So it was. I think it was Guarantee Trust Bank's first TV commercial.
Anthony Ekun, or Tyger, as he is more widely known, has about 20 years experience in marketing communications across retail, mass market, and behavioral change campaigns. He is passionate about solving problems, a passion he has channeled into marketing, social orientation, and youth empowerment initiatives. He has worked on projects across Nigeria as well as in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, United Kingdom, and the UAE. In 2019, he worked on a campaign to convince vulnerable young women who were being targeted by human trafficking rings to shun illegal travel in favor of opportunities close to home. Welcome to Creative Money, Tyger.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Can I call you Tyger?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank
Absolutely.
you. It's a very interesting name. How did you get that name? Let's start from there.
So my name is Anthony Ekun, and Ekun translated means tiger. So when I was starting out, there was someone else called Anthony in my office.
Okay.
And I was given two choices. Either they call me Simba or they call me Tiger.
Interesting.
Tiger.
Tiger.
Yeah.
I like Tiger. Tiger is cool.
It's worked for me over the years.
Okay. So I understand that you studied accounting.
That's true.
So how did you go from accounting to advertising?
I've always had a creative streak. When I was a kid, I used to draw.
Okay.
But my parents wanted me to be a doctor. So they felt drawing and a lot of other things were getting in the way of my studies, so they encouraged me to stop drawing. And so I did. Actually, I remember as a kid, my teacher begging me to draw for my school, and I said, sorry, I can't draw anymore because my folks don't want me to draw. So I stopped drawing. And down the line, I decided I wasn't going to be a doctor.
Right. Put your foot down.
Big issue. Accounting was compromised. Yes. So back then there were only, you had to be a doctor, an accountant, an engineer, a lawyer, architect. If you weren't one of those things, you weren't really, a professional.
Right.
So accounting was compromise we reached. But 1 year into school, I realized that was a mistake. That wasn't what I wanted to do. But I wasn't about to admit it.
Right.
So I finished. But I spent most of my time in school writing.
What did you write?
So I wasn't drawing anymore, but I started writing.
You started writing.
Yeah. So, side story. I was watching a movie with my friends, home videos, as they were called then.
Yeah.
And we were criticizing a lot of what was going on in there. And someone asked me, can you do better? And I said, yes, of course I can do better. So I started to write to prove I could do better. And I wrote my first screenplay, and a number of screenplays after that. So I got my accounting degree through a long and winding road. But then I decided I wanted to see if I could make some money actually writing.
Right.
And that journey led me into advertising. Yeah.
So the screenplay that you wrote, did you turn it into film by any chance?
I didn't. I tried.
Right.
I did try. I think I met with Zeb Ejiro, Chico Ejiro, Sonny McDonald. I did. I was a skinny little kid. Nobody gave me a chance back then. So yeah, I did try, but then it didn't work out. Okay. But it's still something I plan to do.
Yeah. Well, now it's a good time.
Yeah.
Now it's a good time. I'm actually excited for you. Okay, because dreams never die.
They never die. They never die.
That is so interesting. Okay, so you got into advertising. How did you get into that? Did you just...
So off the back of the scripts I was writing back then, a friend of mine who is now in journalism, but actually met a few people in advertising along his way, asked me if I could, I'd like to go into copywriting because, after school, looking for a job and everything. And I'm like, what is that? I had no idea what copywriting was.
Yes.
But I went, read up on it and said, yeah, I can do that. So you write screens, stories and all that. I can do that. So I went for a meeting, which he helped me set up. And first meeting, I had nothing to show, nothing, no portfolio, nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. So he asked me, can you write scripts for TV commercials? I said, of course I can. I can write stories with my eyes closed. And so I went away. A week later, I came back with some scripts I'd written for some random cola, random telco, and some other random brands who read them, loved them. And they gave me notes to a couple of people, and that was the journey that led me. Yeah, so I went for a meeting somewhere. I didn't get past the reception. So I put my scripts in an envelope, sealed it, addressed it to the executive creative director and co-founder at the time. And apparently when she read the scripts, she said, find me that guy, you have to get him,
Wow.
So yeah, that was how I started.
That's how it started.
That's how I started.
Find me that guy. And this is all from not being able to draw.
Yeah, that's where it started.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Do you remember your first screenplay for advertising that became iconic? And did you know it was going to be iconic?
We rarely ever do. I mean, people with hindsight, people say that's iconic, but in the moment, you don't know. So I came into advertising, to be honest, did a lot of flyers. I wanted to write TV scripts. I did not get to write TV scripts for a long time. I did a lot of flyers, lots and lots of flyers, lots of Mr. Biggs radios. Mr. Biggs, yes, lots of those.
That was you?
I did some of that. Not,
all the whole
can't take credit for that. I did some of that.
I'm sure I heard something,
lots of posters, outdoors, and so on, Mr. Biggs. And eventually, I got to write a script for, it was Guarantee Trust Bank. They were doing their IPO. And I remember, because at the time, Guarantee Trust Bank was known for doing lots of brilliant press ads. But they didn't do TV commercials, And so we did this presentation. The agency had put together a presentation, and they were going without any TVs, because Guarantee Trust Bank doesn't do TVs, But I wanted to do TVs, so I wrote the script. I was like, what? Let's do a TV. And it's like, no, they don't do TVs. But I wrote the script anyway. And when the team was going, just before, I think it was the day before the team went to present, my boss read the script and he loved it. So he took it up to, the higher ups. They saw it, my ECD at the time loved it as well. So they decided to add it. And guess what? Client approved it. So it was, I think it was Guarantee Trust Bank's first TV commercial. It was for the IPO. It was Golden Rain thing, with cubes falling down from the sky. And at the time it was pretty decent. May not look as great now as it did then, but at the time it was pretty decent. And that was the first one. Shortly afterwards, I was fortunate enough to work on the MTN Life is Beautiful campaign. And that's where I got to write some of the, participate, because I can't take credit for it.
The whole thing,
But I was involved in some brilliant ads that people still talk about today. Proud of it.
Like the old Jerry.
The old Jerry. Yeah. That was brilliant.
That was brilliant.
That was brilliant. Now, a lot of people think I wrote that. I did not.
Right.
So what happened? That credit goes to an amazing woman by the name of Harp. So what happened was, a chap called Michael Adekunle and Tolu Ajayi, two amazing creatives. Tolu's a brilliant director now. Came up with an idea for this guy who has a girlfriend abroad. So he calls her one day and then gives her the son. It's always a brilliant idea, But I felt like, the son could be a powerful metaphor, for that connection. So they had to be in the same place with the same sun playing off them. So that was my contribution to Sunrise. So I brought in, that same sun touching them in different places. But we were three guys, and we just couldn't write it in a way, because those words were poetic and, well, we thought mushy. And we just couldn't write it in the way that it needed to be written. So, that's where Akpo stepped in, and Akpo wrote the words, and, it became the iconic commercial that is now.
I see. Sunrise. My DJ name. Some people don't know. Yeah. No, I DJ now, so yeah. My DJ name is Sunrise.
Yeah.
As well. So
Fantastic.
it's interesting that we have
Fantastic.
that little connection.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Going
indeed.
through. Okay.
Indeed.
Okay.
And I see it. Yeah.
I do look like
Yes,
a sunrise.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I do feel like the sunrise. I feel like this is like a time in my life where I'm rising again. Because there's been a lot of ups and downs. Well, from the Wikipedia page, it's not the same thing. Right? But then all these things I've come to realize they're all like timelines. They make up like a long, interesting story.
They do. They do.
But the in-betweens, a lot of people don't know the in-betweens and how stressful it can be, how discouraging it can be, and so many times you don't want to go on, but you still do.
Yeah.
So somehow, when this came to me, like the sunrise, it sunrises every day.
It is, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I have to keep rising every day.
Absolutely. But the beauty of sunrise is that the sunrise won't be sunrise without the darkness. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. You
That's it.
You need the darkness to appreciate the sunrise.
Sunrise.
And so they work together. Yeah.
They do, don't they?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a word for today.
No light without darkness.
Yes. No light without darkness. So what happens if it's just light and no darkness?
Then is it light? Without shadow, is it light?
True. True. There has to be some shadow.
There has to be darkness.
So were there times in your career over the years, over 20 years of experience? I had to add that. Were there times in your career where you felt like, you know what, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe this was not a good calling. Maybe I should do something else and start a different business.
Oh yeah, but I have, But the thing is, I mean, I think everyone goes through a point where everyone goes through a low. You know, could be burnout or or you're doing the same thing. But what did happen to me was I did get to a point where I started to realize that it wasn't enough to write commercials that sold stuff.
Right.
I wanted to make a contribution to the world. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking with your grandkids, you don't want to say, I wrote that commercial. It's like, I mean, commercials are great.
Yeah.
But you don't want that to be on your epitaph. Like
just that.
That's just that. It has to be more. So how are we contributing to the world? Well, how are we making a difference?
Yeah.
I think that's, how my mind is working now. So I've got more. I used to be too busy to do anything and stuff like this.
Yes.
But now I make time. I show up. Trainings, if you invite me to train, I show up. Paid or unpaid, I show up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because at the end of the day, you realize that you have to make an impact. You have to make an impact.
Yes. So, in your journey, can you pinpoint like one of the times where you felt like, okay, yes, I need to make an impact, and I feel like this would be it. This would be one of the things that I know that I can change or make a difference in society.
I mean, there's so many, but I think, and funny enough, I'm bringing this back to advertising because I got to work on a brief a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it was collaboration between the UK government and the Nigerian government, NAPTIP, on a human trafficking campaign.
Yes.
And I found out while working on the project that a disproportionate amount of the women who fall victim to human trafficking rings in Europe come from one particular part of this country.
Would it be Benin, Edo?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was Edo and Delta. And which I happen to come from. Because I'm Edo. And that touched me. We had to do something.
Yes.
And so we launched a campaign. It's a not for sale campaign, which was focused on giving young women in the region a reason to believe that they could make it there at home.
Yeah.
And they don't have to travel abroad. We're not saying obviously don't travel. We're just saying don't travel in a way that compromises you or makes you vulnerable to rings like that.
Yeah.
So don't travel illegally.
Yeah.
And that was more successful than we thought it would be because, to be honest with you, I actually didn't think anything was going to move that needle because the mindsets were set in many ways. But research told us that the campaign worked to an amazing degree. So mindsets were shifted. Unfortunately, we did not sustain the campaign.
Yeah.
So the gains may have been lost. But it was proof
That it
that
could be
it
done.
can exactly
Yeah.
can be done.
Okay. So what are you doing now to create impact?
I think probably most biggest thing I'm doing now is investing my time in things that I previously didn't have time for.
Right.
Training,
Mhm.
huge area for me. I've done quite a bit of work with Digify Pro, which is a platform for empowering young people, with digital skills, but also communication skills. I've done some training programs with the UK government. Actually, run a training program in the British Embassy.
Okay.
That was like bringing people in, collaborative.
This has to do with storytelling.
This had to do with communication.
Communication.
But I think one of the things that I'm looking to do this over the next year or two is pivot just slightly to a different type of storytelling.
And what would that be?
Filmmaking.
Ooh.
Yeah, I feel like
my kind of story.
I feel like films have the power to shape mindsets and influence people in a way that very other media don't quite have.
Yeah.
You have the time to actually draw your audience in and create an immersive experience.
Yeah. That stays with them.
That stays with them, absolutely. And that part, let's say with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
I feel like Nollywood has a power, and we have to use that power in a way that does good. So we have a lot. There's so many messed up mindsets in this country,
And some of the messed up mindsets have kind of come from the things that we've seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we're shaped by experiences. So it's all nurture, really. And many of us have experienced certain things that have allowed us to forge certain mindsets and belief systems.
Yeah.
The only thing that can unlock some of those things would be a really, really well-told story. And the thing is, at the end of the day, our experiences shape the stories that wake us up in the morning and that we share with the people around us, that we share with our families and children and so on.
Yeah.
There are alternate narratives that are not being told that unlock those mindsets.
Yeah.
We are divided as a nation in so many ways because we believe that if you come from a particular part of the country, you are a particular way, a certain way. But that's not true. There are hasty generalizations that just are everywhere, and nothing is challenging those. But a really good story makes us think again.
Yes.
A character that we connect with who comes from a different part of the country from us makes us think, okay, maybe there is something I'm not seeing. I should look a little closer. And so the power of storytelling, of filmmaking particularly, appeals to me in many ways.
It appeals to you.
Appeals to me. And we do that to some degree in advertising, obviously, because a well-told commercial really on video is really a 60-second film or a 120-second film, whatever it is. When we don't allow the brand narrative take over. Yeah, it's really, and that requires a certain amount of training because not many people can do that. It's like storytelling on a dime. You have to be really good at crafting narratives to be able to tell a story really well in 60 seconds. Yeah. And if you can do that really well in 60 seconds, you can certainly do it in 90 or 120. 120. So
that's something I would like to see. I would like to experience from you because from your experience in advertising and giving us iconic liners and things that have stayed with us while we grew up and things we remember, like my friend is a great guy, he's a great man. Yes.
Did you just date me? Like... Yeah, I've been dating this, that, carry on.
No, I did not. What I'm trying to say is you've given us things that are staying with us. It's not something we can drop because we remember it just like it was yesterday.
Yes.
But it's been a long time and we would like to see things like that translate into film. We would like to see a movie that looks like Sound of Music. Something that we can pass on from generation to generation like that. And a story that can change lives as well. So having people that understand the art of telling impactful stories is a very important skill to have, and I'm honored to be in your presence.
First of all, thank you for the compliment.
You're welcome.
But I think one thing that we've suffered from is a lack of collaboration. And yes, there are people who know certain things really well, in the advertising space.
Yeah.
But there are people brilliant people in Nollywood space who know things that we don't know.
Yeah.
But we're not collaborating.
Why do you think we're not collaborating?
It's a good question. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Okay.
But I do feel like there is and again, going back to mindsets being forged based on stories that are told.
Yeah.
Many of us grew up in an environment where we were told that partnerships don't work. And there's a societal distrust of the other. So you must protect yourself. And I think many people, not a lot of people collaborate. There are some, but not a lot of people collaborate.
So, if a filmmaker came to you or came to SO&U and said, "Hey, I'm a filmmaker. This is what I do. This is my track record. I would like to collaborate with you and create, things that last a lifetime."
Yeah.
Would you be open?
If it was you, absolutely.
Stop it.
Of course, it depends.
Right.
Obviously,
It depends.
there's no blanket answer to that.
Because I've had one or two experiences, obviously not with SO&U, but I've had experiences where I've gone to pitch an idea to an ad agency, and I said, okay, this is my track record. I've done film. I'm directing. I can direct this, and I can put this together. But this is what we can do. Obviously, there are a whole lot of other people who are doing it as well, and they also pitch, But then there's the back and forth and everything, and you don't get picked at the end of the day. I mean, of course, you get a lot of no's, and that's part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those no's, coupled with the no's that we already get in the film industry, it's like, listen, there's only so much.
Yeah, I know.
There's only so much I can take. So it doesn't really give us, I would say, that drive to want to pursue it further.
Yeah. I know. I mean, at the end of the day, there are many interests and different reasons why that happens.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for your case because I don't know the details of that.
Yeah.
But what I would say is there are no's everywhere.
Yeah, no's
I started out wanting to go into film, but I got a lot of no's.
Right.
Before I pivoted to advertising.
To ads, yeah.
So there are no's everywhere, and obviously, someone said advertising is the business of rejection. Because before you see one idea come out, we've come up with so many ideas that sometimes the client kills, but a lot of the time we kill them ourselves, because we're looking for the something better. And I think one thing that keeps me going is I realize that, no matter how good you think an idea is, there's always something better.
So you keep looking for that.
Keep looking.
So what makes you settle for the one and say this is the money shot?
Sometimes you actually get to something and you're like, this is it. I don't care. This is it.
Right.
Sometimes, a lot of the time you run out of time.
Oh.
A lot of the time you run out of time.
So time plays a factor.
Absolutely, time plays a factor. But sometimes you do arrive at something like, yeah, this is it. If anyone can beat this, they can have it. But this is it. It's the one I want to do.
Okay.
And when you do get to that one, it's a beautiful experience, I'll tell you that. It is.
Okay. I've seen a lot of ads and commercials and things on TV, just like you when you were in school and you said, "Oh, I can do better than that." I've seen a lot of them, and some of them they still give me that same sentiment. Oh, I can do better than that.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't know that. I'm sure there's a crazy process that goes on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Can you give me like a little insight into how that world is, so people know that this is not really a joke?
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. I'll tell you that. I often tell young people who are coming to advertising, you have to be passionate about this. If you don't have passion, you won't survive.
Right.
But obviously it starts with a brief. Client wants something they want to say, they want something they want to achieve, and there's a whole process where we dissect that, sometimes challenge it to ensure that brief is accurate. Then we develop a strategy based on that. That requires insights, that requires understanding your audience. And that's an entire conversation around, who is the audience? Do we understand them? What motivates them?
Right.
And some people stop at social graphics. So, how much do they earn? Where they work, income levels, and so on. But if you really want to connect with your audience, you need to understand them a lot more than that. You need to understand them intimately. I have to feel like I know you personally if I'm going to connect with you, in a way that would really, really resonate.
How do you do that?
So sometimes we do research, but very often, and I find that the most effective way to research is actually to spend time with people. There's that thing where they say if you want to learn about the lion, you don't go to the zoo, you actually go to
The jungle.
savannah.
Oh, the savannah.
Savannah. Lions actually don't live in jungles.
I know.
Yeah. So you go where they live and you study them in their natural habitat. Sometimes we make the mistake of trying to understand people, and we feel like we must have a conversation with them. So we bring them to a room and we have conversations with them, focus groups and so on.
Right.
Focus groups have their purpose. Focus groups have their limitations, and they do, because they have a place. Obviously, there's certain times when they're really valuable to the process,
Right.
but you need to recognize that when you put 3, 4, 5, 6, however many people in a room, they're not always their true selves,
Yes.
and sometimes one person monopolizes the conversation. But I find it's best when you actually go out and spend time with people in their natural habitat. Then you see them for who they truly are. Hopefully. Hopefully, no guarantees.
So do you take out focus groups like that, where you intend to go out and mingle with people just for the simple purpose of getting information?
Yeah, I mean, we do have immersion. So we go out, we spend time in community, we spend time with people, we hang out, we drink with them, there are people who specialize in doing things like that, where they actually go and live with you. They actually live in, with people we're trying to understand, go through their day with them. If they're selling, sell with them, do it, just to immerse themselves in their world and come to a greater point of understanding. Because what we're looking for really are insights.
Right.
Because if you find the right insights, then you can connect with people. But very often, if you don't have enough insights, you're from the outside looking in.
Yes.
And when you're on the outside looking in, very often people revert to stereotypes, and stereotypes don't work.
They don't work. They don't work at all. This is so insightful. Okay, so how does, let's talk about SO&U and what you do in SO&U. Could you talk me through that, please?
So, someone asked me earlier, what do I do? And I said, I think, because I think it's what I do, it's what I get. Yeah, exactly. You know your philosophy. So yeah, I mean, I started out as a copywriter.
Right.
I'm the executive creative director now. That means that I get to work with an amazing team of people, creatives, brand managers, strategists, across the spectrum, media people, events people, digital specialists, it's a huge team. And my GMD, Mr. Demelfort, has been in the game for a long time. And he's kind of an iconic figure in advertising.
Yeah.
And
is this the same with the man that was in the commercial?
Oh yeah, that's where the name came
That's
from.
where the name came from.
That's where the name came from. Yeah.
Right.
So we were part of the Saatchi network at the time, Saatchi and Saatchi. So we're an MNC Saatchi agency now.
Okay.
At the time, we were a Saatchi and Saatchi agency, and that campaign was a regional campaign. With multiple markets working on that. So we had, so our team and teams from other markets came together and brainstormed on that campaign. And when they were looking for a name for the Nigerian market, no one could think of a better name, So Udeme it was.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah, he's a great man, actually.
That's cool. A great man. Okay, so back to what you were telling me about SO&U.
Yes, which part?
The team, you were talking about the team.
Amazing team.
Amazing people. The work you do there is very important because you guys make some very interesting commercials.
Yeah, we do.
You bring some really good stories to life.
Yeah.
So what goes into that process? How do you know that you've done the right thing?
So we trust the process. So obviously, again, we immerse ourselves in the world of our audience. And I find very often that if you actually spend enough time focusing on the people you're trying to talk to, they will tell you how to reach them. Very often. But obviously, we get the right people in the room and develop a strategy. Off the back of that strategy, big idea, which we test wherever we can, and often feedback, and which is why I said people will tell you if you're in the right space. Because if you test the idea, what do you want that idea to make people feel, the expression or your stories, and you ask people the right questions, and you know they give you their responses, and you hope they tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But if we get psychologists in the room who know how to extract the right information from people, then
Do you get psychologists in the
sometimes
room?
we do actually.
Really?
They're specialists. They're specialists who we bring on board to work with us.
Okay.
As part of that process. You know, research companies who have psychologists who work with them and so on to ensure they get the information we need. And once we have the right insights, very often, the ideas almost write themselves, to be honest.
Right.
Very often. We get the right people in the room, brainstorm, come with ideas, test them, keep testing them until we're sure we have something that we're happy with.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned earlier about the Life is Beautiful campaign that I worked on with MTN back in the early part of my career.
Right.
I'll tell you this, we came up with probably 100 stories.
100 stories?
I personally came up with 50.
50 stories?
Yeah.
Where did you go to get these stories in?
Deep. Deep places, But the interesting thing was, we started out by focusing on the brand and what the brand wanted to say, because we wanted to say with MTN, life is beautiful, yeah? And we were asking people, the question we were asking initially was, how do you use your phone, to get through your day, to be happy,
Yeah.
And we were getting a certain type of responses from that, or a certain type of response from that. But we didn't get the sweet stuff, the great stuff, until we set aside the brand and we say, okay, tell us what makes you happy, what do you do, when you want to unwind, what's the high point of your day. So we focused on people.
Right.
And when we understood what they love to do, we said, okay, is there a role for the brand in here?
In there.
Yeah. And once we did that, we started to get some really interesting stories that were true to people's lives, where people resonated with people. And that led us to some really interesting, I think, campaign turned out Sunrise, which many people call Orijin, Dance With Me, Sharp Guy, a number of, ads that came off that, which was the result of that process. Those were great times.
It's a great time.
Yeah,
I like that. So are you going to follow the same approach now that you're going into filmmaking? And would you view your production as a product?
in some ways, but
yes.
So filmmaking, I think the point I've come to is that filmmaking and marketing communications, they overlap in many ways.
They do overlap.
They overlap in many ways. And so now, what we're trying to do with a number of the brands that we're working is tell authentic stories.
Yeah.
And fortunately, funny thing is, my team and I are working on MTN again. So we're really excited about the opportunity to tell some really powerful
really authentic stories, yes.
But I think people are going through stuff.
People are.
And they want you to recognize that when you're communicating with them, and so focus on them, ask them what's going on in their world, what's important to them, what they love, and then find a role in that for your brand.
Aha, I see. Because I was about to ask you a question about this social media space that we're in these days, and a lot of people are influencers, even though they're all doing the same thing. You find some people go viral and some people don't, and some people spend a lifetime trying to know how to go viral. But from what you've just said now about finding authentic stories, then find out how you can fix your brand into that, or the product into that, then that works. Is that a good way? Do you think that that's a good way for people in the social media space to actually become advertising tools?
I would not presume to tell.
Right.
I would not presume to tell wonderful, influencers of social media people how to, but it does help.
It helps.
I found that it helps me. But I think there are different types of creative people, and for some creative people, they express how they feel, and their art really is about expression.
Right.
And they trust that people will find that interesting.
Right.
And
and your art is impression.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And if they stop being authentic and true to who they are, then they lose their audience. They stop being who they are. They stop being interesting.
Yeah.
My kind of creativity is a little different.
Yeah.
So I am trying to communicate. I'm trying to,
Make an impression.
Make an impression.
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, there's an end goal, specific end goal I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So I do need to understand the audience and speak to the audience.
Okay. I like that. So, in spite of all of that, I'm sure there's been challenges writing 100 stories. Beyond that, you know, a regular person would never know. What's the most challenging thing that you've experienced on your journey so far?
Well, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. There've been many stories. So, okay, it's not the most.
It's
but
not,
it's
but one of them,
you know,
yes.
So, we were shooting when we were working on the Power of My Jack campaign, which was another campaign I'm proud to be associated with. We went from scripting to delivering the finished, well, most of the campaign, breaking the campaign in 10 days. And that was challenging.
That's a challenge.
It was something. We shot a commercial with JJ Okocha, you know, we recorded a song with Cobhams, which Two-Face, you know,
was part of.
Yeah, it was like James' album at the time. But the song didn't come out within that 10-day framework. But it was a lot of work that was done.
Yeah.
You know, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that was challenging. But it was rewarding to see it come out and work in the way that it did.
Okay.
But again, off the back of that, we were shooting a commercial. No, we're shooting. I think we realized we wanted to do something because Guinness was sponsoring the Super Eagles at the time, and we realized that there were no great pictures of the Super Eagles, so we decided we're going to take, you know, some pictures.
Right.
And we're working with Kelechi Amadi, would be brilliant, amazing photographer.
Amazing, yes.
You know, and we were set up, and you know, the players were supposed to come and meet us. You know, but they did not show up. You know, so apparently we've been talking to the NFF, and the NFF couldn't deliver them. So, you know, it was so everything set up, equipment, everything, whole day wasted.
Oh no.
You know, we're like, okay, you know what? They were not. There was one particular player actually who said he wasn't coming, and the others were like, well, if he's not coming, then
no one's coming. Oh my goodness.
So it was but then we're like, okay, we're told they're gonna be in Abuja for an event, you know, so come to Abuja, and in Abuja you will set up in the hotel, wherever it is, you know, they'll be there, so you'll shoot them. We packed up, took the equipment, team flew to Abuja, arrived, event was happening, but the guys we wanted to shoot were not there. Oh, you know, so we did a shoot in Abuja, but then we had to fly back to Lagos and fly to houses to shoot people individually, and then put it together in post and everything. So it was challenging. That's a challenge. You know, I think probably one of the only times I saw a brand manager cry, like shed tears, because it just looked like nothing was going to work. But in the end it worked. So,
it did. It did. Oh, I like that. Because I was already like, oh my goodness. Did you ever at any point in time feel like, you know what, I think I need to quit?
I felt like telling a few people off, I'll tell you that.
Oh.
But
yeah.
So challenges are what make this life interesting, no?
Yes, but in the moment.
So the only time I think when you, and the thing is, the bigger the challenge, as long as you can figure a way out, it's cool.
Yeah.
The only time when I think it becomes frustrating and, you know, when you feel powerless, when you feel like you can't do anything, then it becomes a problem. But as long as you believe that you can figure a way out, then it's stimulating.
Okay. I think I'll look at challenges like that now. Stimulate me. That is interesting. That is okay.
You've got to have a little arrogance.
I know, right?
Yeah, creative arrogance.
It just makes you have like a nice air around you. I love it. Okay. So
be humble but be arrogant.
Yes, be humble but be arrogant. In a nice way.
In a nice way. Yeah. No, be arrogant about what you can do.
What you can
believe in yourself.
Yes.
But of course, don't let that play out. You know.
Okay. So would that be the ultimate advice you would give to anybody that is trying to get into the creative space where they can think for a living?
It would be one. I mean, I think so. I would say one thing I often say to them is how far you go in this business is dependent on what you do after you do what you are expected to do. You know, and I find that so many people are so many people are, you know, they're content to just stop at what you demand of them and they don't want to bring that extra.
Yeah.
You know, bring the extra. You know, why are you just doing if you're only doing what's demanded of you, you will never stand out. You will never stand out. And so do what's expected, but
do more.
Bring something extra.
Bring extra.
More.
Be extra.
When we started, we were talking about how, I went from accounting to...
Yes.
I remember one of the things, when I was asked to write this letter, when I was, I think one of my first interviews, I was asked to introduce myself. And I said, no, I realized that no matter how many times I add 2 and 2, it will always be 4.
Yes.
And I wanted something a little less predictable, something where I could bring a little bit of myself into the game and deliver something a little unexpected.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this business. You can't. No one else can do what you do exactly the way you do it.
The way you do it. Yeah. And that's why you're creative. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for today. This was insightful. This was amazing. This was beautiful. Sweet. Be bold. Believe in yourself. Be arrogant about what you can do, but be nice about it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming on to Creative Money. I look forward to having you sit here again. And next time we'll probably be talking about film.
I'll be looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you guys watched this episode or joined us for this episode today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the things you need to do to make sure that you see our next episode. Until next time. Bye.